Hello and welcome to the Dharma Life podcast. So the Great Awakening Part 2. I just mentioned that you need to go and listen to the Great Awakening Part 1. It will kind of put you on the same page in the conversation before you listen to this podcast. This podcast is incredibly, incredibly juicy and probably will, do you know what, maybe awaken you even further. I'm going to share with you my story and my journey around how I woke up. I had my spiritual awakening at 28. I think I've shared with you my story about my mum and, having voices in my head. But actually, that was only one part of my awakening. The second part of my great awakening, my own personal great awakening, was a dear friend of mine and I were doing the 3 peaks. I don't know if you know the 3 peaks. It's where you basically go and climb 3 different mountains. And you do it in 48 hours. So you get a minibus. There was about 15 of us, and we were all part of the Yes group in London. And we decided to do this charity walk. Walk was bad enough. And you climb up Ben Nevis, and you climb out 3 different mountains, one in England, one in Scotland, one in Wales. And I remember he was driving and I was in the front of this van. And we were talking, like we're having a really deep, intense conversation, which I really loved because I was about 28 and I just got into personal development and entrepreneurship. And I'd met all these amazing people that I really, really loved because they weren't, just drinking for their living. And I remember he and I having this conversation and he said to me, you do know that the Bank of England isn't owned by the UK government. And I went, yeah, of course I know, thinking I haven't got a clue what he's talking about. And we went on to talk about the fact that the Bank of England, everybody thinks is owned by the government and by the people. Hence the name, the Bank of England. And he went on to explain that the Bank of England wasn't owned by the government and the people. It was owned by the Vatican and private individuals. Now, this may be a shock to some of you, or it may not be a shock to others of you, but it was a shock to me at the time. And I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. If you were really rich, wouldn't you want to stay really rich? And you'd probably do things to keep yourself really rich, probably some of them quite underhand. And we proceeded to talk about how the Bank of England was a private institution and actually the bank itself lent money to governments. And how the Federal Reserve Bank in America, again, with a name like the Federal Reserve Bank, you would think that it was owned by the state, the government. It's not. Again, it's a privately owned bank. Basically, what I discovered at that point in my life, which was an awakening, was that those banks were owned by a group of individuals, 13 families, the elite. And these 13 families had let me just check. If I can hear some rustling in the background, it's because I have been in a rabbit hole since all this coronavirus stuff kicked off. I have been down a rabbit hole, so to speak, reawakening my knowledge on all of this because I knew it had something to do with what was happening now. So if you hear rustling in the background, I have got pages and pages of spider diagrams and notes that I've taken about this. And I wanted to make sure I get it correct, first of all. And also, I've got a call with my mastery community tonight where we're going to be talking through all this stuff. But in 1913, there essentially were a group of individuals, very rich individuals, that came together to create the Federal Bank. And interestingly, there were about 3 other rich individuals that opposed the creation of this private bank. And those individuals actually died on the Titanic sinking. And so in 1913, the Federal Bank was born. And ever since, that Federal Bank has been loaning money to governments, to the UK government, to the American government, to developing countries' governments. And our banking system used to be backed by gold, meaning that you had the same amount of gold as you had the same amount of currency. So it kind of gave it a balanced system, and it also meant it couldn't be corrupted. Now, when the federal bank came into existence, it became a printing press. So what that means is that the federal bank basically had the license to print money. So it print money, basically meaning that at any point in time, you could have the banks loaning out as much as 40 to 45 times the amount of money they had in the bank. So at 28, this was a big awakening, and I kind of realized that everything's quite not as it seems, what we've been taught. We don't get taught a lot about banking. We don't get taught a lot about how the world works. And I think that's very purposeful. In fact, I know it's very purposeful. And so at 28, I had this huge awakening, and then I went down a rabbit hole for probably about a year or two, investigating all of this stuff, understanding how the banking system worked. I kind of got to understand how these very rich individuals were controlling the agenda within a lot of different industries. So whether it's education, the medical industry, whether it's the medical education, whether it is the school's curriculum, they were also owned big pharma. They also were running things like the World Health Organization. They were also growing our food. And so, long story short, what I kind of discovered at that point in time was that there were dark forces, corrupt families running the world and profiting from it, and profiting from our ignorance almost. You think about it very simply. You think about Western medicine. If those of you who have a more holistic mindset, like myself, we know we can cure things through oils, through energy, through healing, right? But we've been educated into science, and that actually everything has to be pharmaceuticals. So our history, our knowledge was almost kind of hidden from us. And so this was a really big awakening for me at that age. And I just knew as a light worker, I knew I was a light worker. I knew I came here to help people. And I just knew that I was here to make a shift and to help the consciousness of the planet shift. Because if you think about it, a very small percentage of people understood. There's still a very small percentage of people understand this. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a bit more awakened. I'm hoping so. Or this might be a complete shock to you, and that's okay too. You have to find out sometime. But I wasn't sure what to do about it, to be perfectly honest with you. What could one person, do? I just knew my role in it. Intuitively, I felt my role in this was to work towards a consciousness shift on the planet. Those of you that know me and know my work in Dharma know that, I talk about the fact there's only 13% of the planet that are engaged in what they do on a daily basis. They're going through the motions. Most of them aren't spiritually awake. They're not doing their Dharma. They're not living their purpose, right? And that's something that should be available for every single person on the planet. And, that was my work, or it still is my work, waking people up that there's a better way of living. You don't have to live in the matrix. Most people are living with their narrative controlled. So what do I mean by that? I mean that the mainstream media tells them what to think. The films program them. The TV, the radio, the education system, it's all programming us to think in a certain way, buy into separation, buy into advertising, having to have stuff, Actually, the purpose of life is to basically come here and evolve and grow and live into your spiritual purpose and be an amazing person and do incredible things. And, we know when we do our Dharma that magic and miracles are possible. But most of the world has forgotten that and lost. So I decided that I would, from that point onward, 28 to where I am now, 42, I have been working towards a consciousness shift on the planet. So by doing my bit, I knew I was contributing. That was just all intuitive, okay? So I share that story with you because guess what? The good news is we're here. A consciousness shift on the planet is happening. You see me talking about the Great Awakening. You see me saying those words. It's because this time on earth, more and more people are awakening to how this world is run and operated, and they will be calling for a stop to it. So this is why it's incredibly exciting times to be on the planet at the moment. Incredibly exciting. And if you're a light worker, you will have been unconsciously working towards this. Maybe consciously. Some of you will know about the elite, the cabal. You will know about the enslavement of humanity, the New World Order, and some of you won't. And that's okay. There's no judgment here. There's absolutely no judgment, because again, if you listen to this podcast, the chances are you're on a higher vibrational path. You are a light worker. You've come here to make a difference. You're trying to get the world to go from separation to connected. And guess what? We've done it. So what do I mean we've done it? Well, we have had so many people in the last 12-year period, because lots of people woke up to mindfulness, they woke up to meditation, they woke up to the law of attraction. My work has been helping people shift their vibrations. So many people were practicing this that we had global law of attraction onto what they call a paradise timeline. Now, this paradise timeline is all about us ascending, the world becoming a better place. Basically, the world moving from the third dimension to the fourth dimension to the fifth dimension. And again, all of this has been written in astrology, in the planets. The Mayan calendar predicted the end of the world in 2012. But what they predicted was the end of us being on the end of the world timeline. So over the last 12 years, you have been being trained in training to be the light worker that you are. And this is a call for light workers. This is a call for all of you out there who have been doing this work, whether consciously or consciously, it doesn't matter. The amazing thing that's happened is that we have woken up, or we're waking up. There's a great awakening happening of people on this planet, and they're going to need your help and they're going to need your support. Okay, so it's really important that we have compassion and love for people who are just waking up. With everything that's happening out there at the moment, people, my mum and dad, my sister, people, my family, they're scared. They don't know what is happening. We kind of are privy to actually what's been happening is we've been shifting the consciousness of the planet, and that's happening, although it's happening in a bit of a weird way with the lockdown. Your job is going to be to support people coming through and out of that process. So your job is to explain things to them. Your job is to be compassionate. Look at the incredible things that have been happening on the planet since we've had this lockdown happen. Whether it be the world healing, it be people clapping the NHS, people supporting their neighbours. People are inherently good, right? And we have been taught that they're not, and I, this dark forces that have been on our planet for the last however many years are leaving. Their time on this planet has been called, and they are being removed from this planet. So you will see in the media and in the news, be careful where you look for your news consumption. Like, I very much use YouTube, and lots of people I follow on YouTube. I don't trust the mainstream media. In theory, this should be getting better. It should be getting cleaned up. It will be getting cleaned up. And you'll be seeing, people who... some of this corruption will start to come out, and it's a lot of corruption. It's everywhere. It's in every single industry, every single sector. Politicians, filmmakers, Hollywood people. It is in foreign countries. It's in foreign policy. It's in the World Health Organization. It's rife, and it's, depending on how far down the rabbit hole you go, some of it is really quite disturbing. But I think for the purpose of this podcast, all you need to know is that those dark energies that have been removed, and they're being removed. And the best thing you can do as a light worker when you're listening to this podcast is focus on imagining the world you want, right? We are powerful human creators. We haven't been taught this. If you've done Dharma with me, you know this. We manifest and create our own realities. Your job now as a light worker is to guide others into this realization. Your job as a light worker is to basically help them come into the fourth and fifth dimensions. Your job is to awaken spiritually and then get others to awaken spiritually and make this world amazing, amazing place that it can be. You know, we don't want this fear, this corruption, this horrible stuff that has been happening on our planet. And it's done. You know, the planets are supporting the ascension of the earth. So it's an incredible time to be alive. It really, really is an incredible time to be on this planet. So I know it will be difficult for some. You know, we're going to go through a period where, you know, people are uncertain about their salaries. They're uncertain about, you know, how they're going to support themselves because of what's been happening. Jobs have been lost. Businesses are potentially going under. But remember I talked about the amount of money that these people have corrupted? Slowly but surely, as these people have left and are being arrested, and you will see this, you know, keep your eyes on the media, see the CEOs that are stepping down, investigate it. Don't take my word for this, right? This is your job. I'm giving you a big tip off here, but your job is to go and do your own investigation and decide what resonates with you, decide what you want to take on, and leave the rest. But my request is that you do your own investigation. Go and find somebody on YouTube that you resonate with. Go and have a look at what's happening in America at the moment. You know, Donald Trump, what a man, my God, absolute hero, you know. So do your own investigation. But what's going to be happening is this money that has been embezzled, that has been stolen, that has been taken by corrupt means. If you imagine 1% of the planet own the world, the elite 1%, they are trillionaires, right? And you've got developing countries who can't feed themselves. How is that right? How is that fair? Well, the good news is if what I'm hoping happens, which is the Gazara, which is the quantum banking system, comes in, money will be separated and divided up equally and fairly. And this is, you know, don't get me wrong, this isn't going to happen overnight. You're like, watch this woman. What is this woman on about? But what will happen, I'm hoping, potentially we're looking at a reset of the financial system. I'm praying for that because that would be incredible. But the best thing that you guys can do as light workers is focus on what you want in your life. Stay in a high vibration, release any fear, because there's a lot of past lifetime fear coming up. There's a lot of shadow work coming up. You might feel it yourself. There's also a lot of high energy coming onto the planet at the moment. So you might feel tired. You might have headaches. That's all quite normal. Rest. Ask for support from your spirit guides. Ask for support from your team. There's like extreme polarity happening on the planet at the moment because you've got people trapped in the third dimension who are still living in this, matrix and this world, corrupt news kind of area. And then you've got people like us who are, woohoo, this is like the Great Awakening and the Ascension. So there's a massive amount of polarity happening, light and dark. What you can do, though, is release this fear, tune into it, consciously release it, meditate, focus on bliss, focus on high-level emotional vibrations, ask for support from your guides, and limit your screen time. But this is an incredible, incredible time to be alive. And I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. And I really want to make a request, actually. I don't do this very often. If this podcast has spoken to you and you've got something out of it, the more people we wake up to this reality, this great awakening, the better. Please share this with your best friend. Please share this with somebody who you know it would resonate with. Please tag me and let me know that you've listened to it on Instagram. It means the world to me. Like, I can't tell you. So please kind of share the love. You know, we want people to know about this stuff. We want people to wake up. You know, I had this great awakening when I was 28, and then I've had another awakening recently with everything that's been going on, you know. But please do that for somebody else. You know, that's our role. We're bridges, we're catalysts. We're here to serve and help the collective. You know, why shouldn't we have this quantum banking system that serves everybody? But the only way that's going to come in is if people start asking questions and doing their own investigation. So you beautiful people, thank you so much for listening to the Dharma Life podcast. Sending you much, much love. As I said, it's an exciting time to be alive on the planet. And wow, what can I say? Like, my mind has been blown in the last month or two. And I'd just like to put another call out for those of you thinking of coming to do Dharma. Come and do it. This is why we're here. You know, we're here to manifest and create amazing lives. And I can show you how to do it. So come and join us. Right. Love you and leave you. And I will see you all again on the next episode of the Dharma Life podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the Dharma Life podcast. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. Please come over and say hello on my Instagram, our Facebook group, and also please let me know what you thought. So if you are listening, please take a screenshot of the podcast that you are listening to. Tag me on Instagram and I will reshare your post, and please let me know what it is that you got out of today's episode. Remember, when we do our Dharma, we are happier, healthier, we live longer, and we have a deep sense of unshakable inner peace.